Welcome to Naked Faith, where we take off the masks, drop the performances, and get honest about what it really means to follow Jesus. I'm Ron, and this is my amazing co-host, Grace. And together we're creating a space for real conversations, real stories, and real encounters with a love that never gives up. No agendas, no religious hype, just real people sharing how God met them in the messy middle and pointing to one truth. Jesus still transforms lives. So whether you're walking strong or hanging on by a thread, you're welcome here. This is Naked Faith. Now let's get into it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And Michelle's joining today.
Yes.
And Michelle is joining
Michelle
today.
is back.
Yeah.
Michelle is back. Awesome.
I think she's back and here to stay, guys.
I think so.
She
love
is
it.
back and here to stay. Yes.
We love her.
Watch out.
So I need to change the opening script now.
Yeah.
Probably.
It's all good. It's all good. Hey, all right. So episode 3, Adam and Eve. Let's finish up Eve. And then just to give you a precursor for our 3 listeners out there, we might have some guests lined up. And so we might spend the next couple episodes interviewing some of our guests, which will be really cool. So stay tuned. We'll let you know. Our super amazing social media person will definitively let you know before the next episode drops. So, all right.
Yes.
So getting into it. All right. So where we left off was we were talking about the being that was humanity split into 2. And now we're in the Garden of Eden. So I'm going to ask you guys, what have you heard about this story?
Just the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve and everything.
Okay.
That whole, that's what you're asking, right?
Like, more importantly, we're talking about Eve specifically, right? Like, what have you heard about Eve's role in this? Just curious.
So I've been doing some research about this since we had been talking about it. And the one thing I found kind of interesting is how we blame Eve for the downfall of this. But then, is it really Eve's fault? Like, that's the big question. Is it her fault, or is it a collective between Eve, Adam, and the serpent? Like, is it a collective?
And God.
Yeah. And God, too. Yeah. So that's what I found kind of interesting about the whole story. So,
okay. All right. So before we dive into that, because that's a really good segue, but what have you been? Okay. So before you did research, right? So you read the Bible, and what were you told?
I mean, I guess I never really thought much about it. It seemed pretty straightforward for me of there was Adam and then Eve, and then they ate from the tree. The snake told them to eat from the tree, and then they were punished, and that was kind of the end of story.
The story.
Okay. What about you, Michelle?
Same thing.
Same thing?
Yeah, same thing.
Okay, so that is the generic version, right? But so I talked about there's nuances in the text, right? And if you don't pay attention to the little nuances, like, you can miss a lot of stuff here, right? And so I'm just going to read this. This is Genesis 3 6, starting in Genesis 3:6, right? So this is the serpent has, and I want to go back to those because there's a whole lot to dissect from that first part there, but this is after the serpent has had a dialogue with Eve, right? And so this is interesting. The woman saw that the tree's fruit was good to eat and pleasing to look at. She also saw that it would make a person wise. So she took some of the fruit and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. So I'm going to stop right there.
Okay. What are your thoughts?
Who was with her? So that seems to be a phrase that always gets left out. As a matter of fact, that actually was left out of translations for many years and was just recently put back in. So, okay, so if Adam was standing right next to her, when the snake was deceiving her and he was with her, like, I don't know, what does that invoke?
I mean, I look at it later in the chapter, and he says, when God shows up, the woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it. And when I first read that, it still sounded like he was immediately blaming her, but it's like he at least could admit that he still ate it himself, you know?
Oh, he completely threw her under the bus. I mean, yeah, absolutely. But so okay, so look, this is an interesting thing because we learn in Genesis 2, God gives them instruction, right? He gives the Adam instruction, which is you can eat of anything in the garden except for the tree of knowledge, right? But so if we go back to the same thing we talked about last week, that this is before the literal splitting of the two beings, then who's really to blame here? Who was given the instruction to not eat of the tree of knowledge?
Adam was. So that's how I see it. Like, Adam was given the instruction, and Eve was created after God gave Adam the instruction not to eat from the tree of knowledge and good and evil. So it was up to Adam. I feel like it was up to Adam to tell Eve, but in this case, Eve doesn't really believe what Adam says. She's believing what the serpent says. So
well, what's interesting to me, I didn't realize this, but for some reason I thought Eve didn't know anything at all about the tree, and God had only told Adam. But then, the beginning of this chapter starts with the serpent saying to the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" And the woman said to the serpent in reply, "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it or you will die." And so when realizing she responded with that, I was like, oh, she does know. I don't know if Adam must have just told her or it could go along with what you were saying, Ron, of like maybe they were still, one being at that point. So they both just instinctively already know the quote unquote rules of the garden and the tree of knowledge.
Right. So like if I look at it, like to me, the interpretation is if, again, as we talked about last week, right? If I think about Adam and Eve being one being and then they're literally split in two, the instruction was given to both of them. So they're both equally knowledgeable of what they can and cannot do in the garden, right? Which was the only rule was don't eat of the tree of knowledge, right? And so, but here's another interesting thing that point out, like, why did the serpent deceive Eve and not Adam?
That is a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, think about this, right? Like, if you think about in a relationship between like a husband and a wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're equal partners in the marriage, but I'm probably going to make a lot of people mad with what I'm about to say here, but like who typically is the organizer? Who typically is the person in the relationship that I don't know how to say it, like the glue that holds things together, right? Like the one that organizes and coordinates and, right? Like,
yeah, usually the woman.
It's
the
usually
wife.
the woman, right?
Yeah.
So like, and I, just like in my own relationship, honestly don't plan a lot of this stuff, right? It's my wife plans it. And then we always joke, like she's the ideal person, but I'm the executioner, right? Like she says, oh, I think I want to paint the house. Next thing you know, I'm out painting the house. Like I didn't have the idea to paint the house, but she said, I want to paint the house. And I'm saying, what color do you want to paint it? While I'm going to the paint store to buy paint. You know what I mean? Like
and
it's
Ron,
kind of,
Sorry, you finish. Oh, you finish.
No, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say that you perfectly just described the balance of masculine and feminine energies within every relationship and within every person itself. Of the idea that is the feminine energy, and then the execution, the action, that is the masculine energy.
Interesting.
So,
yeah.
The creative flow and ideas, that is usually the feminine energy, and then the action put into place, that is the masculine energy, and we all are capable of doing all of that. So,
well, I don't know if we're all capable of doing that, but
we all get in our own ways mentally.
I don't know that how capable I am of organizing and planning things, but I'm just totally kidding.
Ron needs to learn how to take an improv class and understand the concept of yes and.
I'm just saying, I would be completely lost if I didn't have my wife in my life, because
okay. Thank you for admitting that on behalf of all men.
Hey, I'll be, like, I don't have, I'll be.
Yeah, no, I know.
I have no pride in the fact that, so I don't know.
Of course,
whenever I read this, I find it interesting because it's like, okay, so, I mean, you have these two beings, and if you go like with the traditional thought, right? So let's just put ourselves in the context of when this was written, right? Even today, it's a patriarchal society, right? Why is that, right? I mean, the best guess I can say of why it's a patriarchal society is because, men are traditionally stronger. We're the hunter-gatherers, the protectors of the family, that sort of thing, right? So I guess in a sense, like, if we were to have a tug-of-war contest, more likely than not, the men are going to win, right? Like, I mean, that's just a given. So I don't know what drives, like, from the beginning of time, what drove this idea of patriarchy being the way our society is structured. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I feel like the answer I could provide is just well, I say that, and then I'm like, I feel like it's way layered, of where did patriarchy stem from, or how did it come to be when, getting into the New Testament, and some people believe that Jesus is the Son of God and some people don't. And then Jesus was killed by the church and state. They killed him, and then, built an entire empire of the church based on Jesus's teachings. They killed him, sacrificed him, so to speak, just to then perpetuate what he was saying, except they didn't even necessarily do it, in the way God would have intended, which is that they then created this entire church empire to colonize other nations, and convert other nations to Christianity or Catholicism. They somehow had the power to expand to all these countries of like, hey, this is the right way of doing things. These are the rules because we said so. That's just kind of like how it was. And it kind of just stems from the fact that certain people believe Jesus is the Son of God and certain people don't. And then the Roman Empire basically killed him and then used him as the face of their church, and just pushed that onto so many countries.
Wow, that was a total diversion.
Was it? I mean, you were talking about patriarchy, and I'm like, is that not what happened? I don't know.
Well, no, I'm just going back to, like, that's a whole nother topic, man.
Of course.
That's a whole nother topic. I'm just saying, like, when you think about this, like, okay, so the serpent, it said the serpent was more clever than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. The serpent said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from the fruit of the tree in the garden? Blah, blah, blah. We all know what happens after that, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, it's really interesting that the author of the text would point out that the serpent spoke to the woman in this situation. And so the question you ask yourself is like, and again, I don't have the answer. I'm just pondering, right? I'm pontificating at this point. Is why? Like, why would the serpent, if Adam was supposed to be the head of the family, or I mean, this is what I've been told, right? Like, oh, the man is the head of the household, and the man is the the head of the church, and but we're equal partners in all this, right? But this is what you always hear, right? But it's interesting to me when you kind of ponder on this text, like, okay, but the serpent chose to speak to the woman and deceive the woman, and then later on in the text, so the woman goes through and eats the fruit, finds that it's pleasing and blah blah blah, and then she gave it to her husband who was with her. So the entire time, if Adam is supposed to be the priest of the family, like, where was he? Where was he in this story? Why did he not stop her? Right? Why did he not? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not trying to say that the patriarchy is the right way. What I'm trying to say is, if you think about in society, if patriarchy is how people viewed the world, and even today we still kind of view the world that way.
Kind of. I mean, probably not as much as we did back then, right? But like, don't you find this interesting? Definitely.
Well, do you think, like, maybe if the serpent targeted Eve, like, it's more, I guess, going back to more like the traditional view, like with the woman being kind of like the, not head of the family, but she kind of is the idea of the family that creates the family. You think that's maybe an attack on like the family, or like something like that?
Yeah. I think, I mean, do you want my opinion? I think there's more significance to the woman in the story than what we have been told. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like,
because I would.
So, all right. So let's break this down for a minute. The serpent, we generally reference to the Satan or Satan, right? And so if you understand, and like, we're gonna do later on a whole discussion on spiritual realm and cosmic sin and that stuff, but so if you think about, like, okay, so the Garden of Eden is on the top of a mountain, and it's that merging of heaven and earth, right? Because this was God's garden. This is where God resided. It was, later on described as the footstool or God's chair on earth or whatever, right? So God's presence was in the garden, right? And so in the spiritual realm, there's these heavenly creatures that were created, and there's a hierarchy to these heavenly creatures. Well, the one they call the Satan or Satan, devil, whatever you want to call him, was one of these high-ranking angelic beings, right? Who decided that, again, and we can discuss this a lot later, but decided that, they did not like the footing of man, because when God created men, or created humanity, he created us in his image. And so we were on equal footing. I wouldn't say equal footing. That's the wrong word. We were given authorities and privileges that the angelic beings were not given. Right? And so this goes back to the beginning when we talked about, God paraded the animals in front of the Adam, and he named them, right? If you think about that. So the supreme being of the universe creates this whole universe, and this beings, the humanity that he created, did not have any special powers or abilities. I mean, we're all just normal people, but yet the authority to name these animals he bestowed upon the human being, right? The angels didn't have that power. The angels didn't get that kind of authority, but they had divine powers, right? But we do not. And so, like, these angelic
wait,
go ahead.
Can I ask you something? What makes you think that we as humans don't have divine power?
We don't have divine power in the sense that the angels have divine power.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So, like, what do they have versus what we don't have?
Oh man, you guys are going to make me divert, aren't you?
No. I'm just curious.
This is good.
Like,
This is good because man, I really want to pick this apart at another time, but I mean, like, if you think about the spiritual realm and the material realm, so if you go back to, like, you know, who here is not a Marvel fan, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
The multiverse, okay? Like, in my mind, the multiverse is real. There are multiple dimensions, right? And there's this dimension that I don't believe in multi dimensions as like there's 40,000 versions of me that exist out there, right? But I believe that I could be wrong. I'm just saying, in my opinion, I don't believe that part, you know. But I do believe that there's the spiritual realm that exists with the material realm. We live in the material realm, right? Physical things, right? You can touch, you know, I can touch the computer, I can touch the couch behind me, I can touch the desk that I'm sitting at. Like, that's the material realm, right? The spiritual realm is where the angelic creatures, angels, whatever you want to call them, they reside in the spiritual realm. The spiritual beings have the ability to move between the two realms. So a spiritual being can come into the material realm and appear as whatever. Again, I got to be careful what I say. They can appear to someone in a form that's materialistic, but is not their true form. Does that make sense? So they could be a human, they could be an animal, they could be whatever, right? We don't have the ability to traverse between the realms. Like, we cannot see into the spiritual realm. We cannot travel into the virtual realm. And when they, you know, there's a theory that when we die, our soul, our spirit goes to the spiritual realm. And then we have the ability to see into the material realm, but we can't travel into the material realm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Got it.
That's the whole new heaven and earth, right? So this creature's the serpent, and just entertain me for a minute. Let's assume that this creature, you know, later on, because there's many names for this person, but it's one of the archangels, right? That rebelled against God. Okay. And why would because you got to think, like, okay, so here's a serpent that talks, right? Like, I mean, that right there invokes a response to people like, oh, snakes don't talk. Like, they don't talk, right? So you think about the term the serpent or the Satan, and this creature more clever, right? So Adam and Eve would have had a familiarity with these creatures because they were in the garden. And think about right now, like, Grace, Michelle, you're walking down the street and a snake comes out of the tree and says, hey, come here, I want you to try this apple. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to freak out. And you're going to run, and you're going to be like, oh my God, there's a freaking snake that just talked to me. And people are going to go, Grace, you're crazy. Michelle, you're like, what kind of drugs are you on, right? Like, I mean, for real, right? So there's a familiarity with this creature that's talking to Eve at this point in time, right? Or we'll just say the woman, because at this point she doesn't have a name, right? So, and they're familiar with this creature. So, like, it's not like they don't find this unusual. They don't find this weird. They don't find this bizarre that this creature's talking to them. And so I go back to then, okay, so if you take the spiritual idea of what I just explained, this spiritual being would also have a familiarity with the plan of God's creation. And there's a whole nother discussion we can have about the divine council and all this stuff. And that's a whole like, but very fascinating stuff, right? And so if you kind of live in that realm, then this angelic being would be familiar with the hierarchy of God's creation. So this being would be familiar, not only one, that humans were made in God's image, and two, this person would understand the role of men and women, male and female, in this sense. So to me, when I think about this, if Adam was supposed to be the high priest of the family, so either you could say one of two things. Either he knew he couldn't deceive Adam, which I argue that can't be true, because we know Adam was standing next to her when this conversation was happening. It says it in the text, right? Mm-hmm. She ate of the fruit and she gave it to her husband who was with her. So the whole time that this dialogue was happening, it wasn't like Eve's walking through the garden by herself and the serpent says, hey, Eve, if you eat this from the fruit from this tree, what's really going to happen? And then she takes the fruit and then goes and seeks out her husband. No, he was standing there with her. So like, again, I go back to like, okay, it's really interesting to me that the serpent would deceive the woman and not the man.
I think I feel like I might have like an answer to this kind of situation that you're talking about. Because your original question was, why did the serpent deceive Eve and not Adam, right?
Right.
I feel like it has something to do with what you would consider to be divine masculine and divine feminine energy. Like you were saying, the man is like the high priest of the house. That could translate to being like the emperor. That's like divine masculine energy. And the divine masculine is the protector of the material realm, of the physical world. He's the protector of the physical realm. The divine feminine energy is the protector of the spiritual realm. And so with that energy in mind, with that being a big classifier between the two energies, like it makes a lot more sense that the serpent would talk to the woman, because the woman is considered to be the protector of the spiritual realm.
Interesting.
And this is kind of what I got from what you were saying, Ron. So based on your theory, did Adam see the serpent as as Eve saw it, or did Adam see the serpent as something else, or did he even see the serpent at all?
Huh, that's an interesting take.
That is a good point. Yeah, because I also think about the fact, like, the serpent is always classified or kind of along the lines of, Satan or Satan, as you said. And I would argue that, if everything is made in God's image, even God was the snake, God, okay, how do I explain this? Like Satan and the devil is like the shadow version of God. We all have light and dark energies. We all have our shadows and things like that. And it's like the devil is the shadow version of God in my mind. Because everything is made in God's image. We're all reflections of each other. And so everything on earth is a, expression of God. And so then I would argue that God is the serpent as well.
So I'm not discounting what you're saying, but the text, if we're looking at the text, the text only discussed that humanity was made in God's image. So like a dog is not made in God's image, right? A giraffe is not made in God's image. And when we say image, right? Like I guess when we invoke that term image, it's not that we physically look like God, or you know what I
Right.
mean. It's the soul. It's the we are. So okay, interesting. Go back to the question you asked. Are we divine? Well, in some senses, maybe yes, because we were made in the Creator's image, right? And so when you think about what does that mean, being created in that image? Well, it's not a physical representation. It's a sense of being, a sense of who you are, how you act in the world, right? Like that's the image. We're the image bearers. We're supposed to be love. We're supposed to be kind to one another. We're supposed to be, all the things that we seem to fail miserably at humanity. Everything that we do wrong is what not being in the image of God, right? And so if you go in that aspect, right? And again, I just want to say, like, not everything in the material world is the image of God. That honor was only bestowed on human beings.
Okay.
So, like, that's why, if you scientifically, right, they say we're all animals. Okay. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with that. Maybe we are a classified animal. I don't know how you classify. We are the only unique of our kind, right? Like there's not there's humans and then there's everything else, right? Like it's not like there's 14 versions of humans or 14 variants, right? Like you look at dogs, I mean, you could have all these different breeds, but at the end of the day they're still dogs, right? Like humans are humans. I mean, we're all made the same way. And then we also have the ability to reason and deduct, which animals usually do not, right? I mean, think about what animals do. They eat, they sleep, and they go to the bathroom, and they procreate. That's it. That's all they do.
Yeah, I can.
Right? Well, we humans have more ability to that. So again, I go like it's an interesting concept to me when you think about why was the woman deceived and not the man in this instance. And and I reason why I say this is like this goes back to the whole, I think there's a higher importance for women than what has generally been given. I guess is where I'm trying to go with this.
Yeah.
Right? So like I think we might have said this in our intro episode, right? Like, or maybe we were talking about this before we even started recording, but I think about like the role of women in our society, right? There are certain things. I mean, there's a significant ability that women have that men will never have. And to me, it's significant, right? Like you guys have the ability to create life. Now, I mean, when I say that, I know it takes two to create the life, right? But women, the baby grows inside of the woman's body, right? Like everything, the whole existence of that child is dependent upon the woman. You know what I mean? Like to me, and I go like that, there's a special characteristic there that men don't have. So this is where I go back to like, okay, so there's a greater role here that I think we tend to diminish. Like to me, it's significant because I can never have a child. You know what I mean? Like not on my own, right? I wouldn't even know what that's like,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I can only observe what my wife went through, but I can't know what she felt like and, all of the indigestion and the body aches and the like craziness that happens. You know what I mean? Like,
not just physical, it's mental, emotional.
So.
Right, exactly. And so, and this is where I go back to like, and maybe this is the feminine energy stuff, right? Like, then you think about, now that the child is born, who's typically the nurturer in the family. It's the female. It's the mom, right? Mom is mostly the nurturer, right? Like, I'm not saying I don't have a soft spot for my children, but I'm the rub dirt on it and you'll be fine type of person. Whereas mom is the one that coddles and does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think men could learn from nurturing energies and I think men all have the capacity to nurture, maybe not as much as a mother, because that's a whole other, divine energy in itself, the mother. But yeah, I mean, men have the ability to be that nurturing energy for their child as well.
All right, let me say this. I'm not saying I'm not a nurturer. I'm not saying that I can't be nurturing to my kids. I'm not saying like I'm just this heartless person.
No, I didn't, and I wasn't saying that, of course.
No, I mean I can be empathetic towards my kids or other children that I meet. Like I can feel when they're in pain or when they're happy and that sort of stuff. But like if you're coming to me, if my children know not to come to me to get cuddles, because they're not going to get that from me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll give you a hug. We can sit on the couch together for about 2 minutes and then I'm done. Like, time to move on.
Yeah.
Go to the next seat, right? You know what I mean? Like, but my mother or my wife will sit up for hours and talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, it's 10 o'clock at night. It's time to go to bed, isn't it? Like, talk to them tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's kind of this methodology, right? So I just say this because I feel like there's a greater significance to this. And I feel like we don't talk about that enough. And to me, well, you know what? I'll point this out. Later on in the story, right? So now God comes down and he says, where are you? Right? Like, I mean, God knew where they were, but he wanted them to admit that they had done something wrong. And so then you get this whole question of, if they had just said, yeah, I ate at the tree and not tried to throw each other under the bus, then they would have been fine, right? But then we get into the only the 2 times that God cursed humanity, right? And he said, and this is kind of, because I read this a few weeks ago and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So, where's it at? So he says, so the Lord God said, he's saying this to the serpent, right? He said, you are set apart from all livestock and all wild animals. I am putting a curse on you. You will crawl on your belly. You will eat dust all the days of your life. I will make you and the woman hate each other. Your children and her children will be your enemies. Her son will crush your head and you will bite his heel. And then to the woman, he said, now this is the curse to the snake, right? Now, point out here, I will make you and the woman hate each other. That's interesting. He didn't say that to Adam. He says that to the woman. Or he says that to the snake about the woman, right? And then he says to the woman, I will increase your pain when you give birth. You will be in great pain when you have children, and you will long for your husband, and he will rule over you. Now, I say that this line was added. This is the patriarchal part of society, right? Mm. So now, the only curse that was bestowed upon the woman was that you will have pain in childbirth. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But to Adam, he said, I'm putting a curse on the ground because of what you did. All the days of your life, you will have to work hard. It will be painful for you to get food from the ground. You will eat plants from the field, even though the ground produces thorns and prickly weeds. You will have to work hard and sweat a lot. I mean, this is a different version translation, but to produce the food you eat. You were made of the ground, and you will return when you die. You are dust, and you will return to dust. So the curse on the man is enduring for their entire life. But the curse on the woman is only during childbirth. And the precursor to Jesus coming is the woman and the serpent will hate each other, and her children will be enemies with the serpent. So this is the precursor to Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm.
He will crush your head, and your son will bite his heel. Like, again, to me, that's significant because Adam's curse was enduring for his life, for his entire life. You're going to have to work hard, blah, blah, blah. But for the woman, the curse was you will have pain during childbirth. Now,
that makes a good point, though. I don't think I ever realized that.
I don't know how painful it is to have a child.
Yeah.
But it ain't painful enough to make women to stop having kids because, my wife had 2, Michelle has 2. Some people have 6, 8, 12. So, again, it's not that unbearable of a pain that would preclude you from having, what I mean? You're not one and done.
I don't know if you're allowed to have an opinion on this, Ron.
I'm not. I'm just saying, if you think about this, right? It's
no, I get it.
Painful.
I get it.
I'm not trying to diminish the pain that you go through. I'm saying it's not. Does it make sense what I'm saying? Am I totally?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean,
and just to throw that out here, I've heard, and I don't know how true this is, but I've heard that we don't remember the pain, and that's why we keep having children.
Mm-hmm. I don't. Yeah,
if there's a scientific thing, let us know. But that's what I've heard.
I know. I've definitely heard. That's the thing is, I feel like I've heard stories from women of as soon as that baby's out, all that pain just disappears.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know if it's necessarily because it's it's worth it. Obviously, they have their child now. Maybe it's something in the brain, like you said, could be scientific. But I have definitely heard that from a lot of mothers that as soon as that baby's out, any pain is gone. But of course, then there's the after effects of the next month or so. Your body's recovering from childbirth, but yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. It's just interesting to me. So again, this is where I go back to I think. It's a significance to me that I don't think we talk enough about. And again, I think it's because it's this patriarchal society, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it goes on to say Adam named his wife Eve, and then she would become the mother of every living person.
Yeah. So what about it is so significant that you feel is related to patriarchy in general?
Well, I feel like because we are a patriarchal society, I think because of the patriarchal society,
mm-hmm.
Eve tends to get blamed for the fall,
mm-hmm.
right? Oh, there was this fall. Now you could say that the fall really wasn't again, diving into the spiritual realm, right? If there were a group of angels, and if you think about the hierarchy of angels, right? There's this bottom level of angels, and these were the worker bees, right? And then they say there's seven steps, right? But then there's these angels that were on the divine council, and these were the ones that God created to advise and assist, right? Not that God needed advisors, but he's a communal being, and that's why we were all created, right? Because God wants to be around his creation, right? So if it's one of these, a group of these beings that were on the divine council were the ones that who were there from the very beginning, right? When God created, they say when God created the heavens and the earth, like that structure was created, right? And so he created the heavens first and then created the earth. So these angelic beings that are on this divine council were from the beginning, and they knew the divine plan all along. And some would argue the divine plan was we're living out the divine plan because this was always the plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this group of angels rebelled, and so they perverted the creation.
Mm.
And so what's a bigger, like, sometimes you'll hear this referred to as the cosmic sin. So there's the sin of man, right? The eating of the fruit from the tree of knowledge. But then there's this cosmic sin that happened. And so, like, where does that rank on the order of things? Like, in my mind, the cosmic sin has far greater implications than the sin of man.
Mm. What is the cosmic sin then?
Well, the cosmic sin would be these angels that rebelled.
Okay.
So, like, okay. So if you go back to the beginning, the earth was form and voidless, or void and formless, right? So God creates order out of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so in the heaven, in the spiritual realm, and in our realm, there is an order to way things work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is God's presence in our lives, is that out of the chaos, he creates order and good. And so in this divine plan, there is an order because he spoke the chaos out of existence. And then you could get into this whole, like, the Jews believed the seas were the chaos, right?
Mm.
And so, but the ordered land was God's creation. He raised up land, and seas were the chaos, and blah, blah, blah. So if these angelic beings were part of the creation narrative, meaning that they were there when all of this was created, and they rebelled, so they introduced chaos into the ordered realm. Like, that's a far, to me, like, that's a far more cataclysmic sin or disruption of chaos than the beings eating of a forbidden fruit. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So does God already know this is all gonna happen, or is this something that just comes
That's
out
a good
of
question.
Nowhere?
I mean, that's a really good question. Go ahead, Grace.
Well, no, I guess just trying to understand it a little bit more, the cosmic sin of it all. So you're saying the angels introduced chaos in a world of order that was created out of chaos.
Correct.
Right? Okay. I'm just like trying to make sense of it because I'm like, it's like Inception a little bit. But would you say that this sin of man stems from that chaos that they created? Like, and that's
Absolutely.
why it happened?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because if you think about the Garden of Eden, it's God's sanctuary, right?
Yeah.
And in his sanctuary, it's ordered.
Mm-hmm.
And so this angelic being came disguised as a serpent. I mean, if we take the story for the way it's written, this angelic being disguised itself as a serpent, and it introduced chaos into the ordered garden, into God's inner sanctuary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what's more detrimental? Is it that these creatures, the human beings, were deceived and ate of the fruit? Or was it more that the angelic being, who knew that this was God's inner sanctuary and brought chaos in it to disrupt order? Like, what has a far-reaching implication? Again, I don't know the answer. It's just, these are things that I ponder, right? Like, to me, it's more, I mean, not to say that, and we say the fall, right? But I mean, really, like, was this a fall, right? It was a disobedience to the only rule that they had to live by. And then the fallout from that disobedience was, instead of owning up to your disobedience, they used more deception and deceit to justify what they had done.
Yeah, because they felt shame.
Because they felt shame, right?
Yeah.
So there's this introduction of chaos into the ordered world that then has perpetuated since the beginning of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when heaven and earth come back together, it's the order. The chaos goes away. There's an order. The perfect harmony of order comes back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so this is why we're separated, because there was chaos that was brought into order, into the inner realm. So here's another interesting thing. Where Adam and Eve, and this goes back to, like, what is Eve's role, right? Were Adam and Eve priests?
It's a good question. I mean, could be true, doesn't have to be. I don't know.
Well, okay. So if you look at the way the tabernacle was designed, there's an order. Here, we'll use that word again.
Mm-hmm.
There's an order to the way the tabernacle was designed. And some would say that the order of the Garden of Eden was the original blueprint for the design of the tabernacle, right? And so in the tabernacle, there's this area, where you come through the doors and there's this courtyard type thing. And then eventually you get into the inner sanctum. And the inner sanctum is where God resided. And only the priests were allowed to go into the inner sanctum. Right?
Okay.
And so one day out of the year, the priest could go into the inner sanctum, they could commune with God, and then they could come out. Only that one day a year. Right? Any other time they would die. So you could think about, if Adam and Eve were in the inner sanctum. So if the Garden of Eden is set up like the tabernacle, if it's the original blueprint of the tabernacle, the Garden of Eden would be the inner sanctum of the tabernacle. But in the original plan, we were living in the inner sanctum. So I go back to the very beginning of the story, right? If the very first is, we learned from Genesis 1, like, to talk about, there's two different versions of the creation story. One is more detailed than the other, right? But it would lead you to believe that humanity was created and Adam and Eve were put in the Garden of Eden. So outside of the garden, there's this humanity that's existing. And
Okay.
Adam and Eve were put in the garden to be the priests to everybody else.
Okay.
I mean, it's just one thought, right? So
Yeah.
if you buy into this train of thought, right, then what does that put Eve? She was a priest.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't really why we started this whole conversation. What is Eve's role? I mean, she was a priest.
I get that.
Yeah.
Throwing that out there,
Yeah.
Definitely something to ponder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Definitely something to ponder. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many layers to the story, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so many things to think about. So, like, I go back to, like, okay, so what, again, the takeaways that I think about a lot when I think about this, the beginning of the beginning, right? And Eve had a more significant role than I feel like we give credit to.
Mm-hmm.
And Eve represents the female part of humanity in this story, right? And so Eve was given abilities that man was not given. And to me, that's significant. That is a significant piece of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, when we try to diminish women, I go back to this. Like, well, women were given the ability to create life. And I don't want to say create. Maybe create is the wrong word.
No, I'd say it is the right word. But what would you
Well, I
say?
mean, it takes the man and the woman to create the life,
Right.
but the whole, if you look at the whole 9-month gestation period for a human to become a human, to be born, that is all done by the female.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and to me, that's significant. And then you go back to all these different things we talked about. The serpent didn't deceive Adam. The serpent deceived the woman. Why was that? Like, things to ponder. Why would you deceive the woman and not the man? Well, because in my mind, the woman played a more significant role than what we give her in this situation, right? And so, and then if they were both priests to be in the garden, and they were then to spread, if they were then supposed to be the priest to the humanity that existed outside of the garden, then that would tell you that Eve was made a priest, which means that she was equal footing as Adam and shares all the same rights and responsibilities, roles, whatever, that Adam did, in that they were both priests to the world. Which then goes back to argument. Are women allowed to be priests, deacons, pastors, whatever in the church or in life, teachers? And in my mind, I would say yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like even relating both Adam and Eve to be completely equal and both priest or priestess in Eve's case, like when you were speaking about that, that just reminded me again of that, to have true equal partners in that sense, and they're both like that. I just can't help but think about the divine masculine and feminine energies. That is like a true, partnership, and they both have that strong spiritual energy within them to then share with others. So along the same lines, but I do also like, you mentioned something about being separate from everything else and how we can only communicate, or certain people can only communicate with God on one day of the year in the inner sanctum. And, that's why Adam and Eve are the priests, so to speak, of like, they're the ones that can spread the word, I guess.
So, well, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I personally, I guess I just don't particularly like the thought, idea, and ideology of being separate from God, being separate from any higher power, because then that kind of denies or invalidates our own inner wisdom. And that's kind of then tying it back to the tree itself. It's the tree of good and evil, the tree of knowledge and wisdom. And because the human beings ate it, like, they do actually have that wisdom within them, in my opinion. And I sometimes interpret, Eve eating the apple, she's the one who is deceived and eats it first. To me, I see that as the woman's intuition, kind of being created, so to speak.
Right. So I would say, okay, so this was the structure prior to Jesus coming to earth. So the separation, right? So like the structure that was set up prior to Jesus coming was what I just described. That only the priest could go in the inner sanctum, and they could only do it one day a year, and only one could go in, like blah blah blah, right? But now when Jesus came, that all changed. Because we now have the Holy Spirit that is with us, and that's our our commune, right? Like that's our ability to experience God's presence. The Holy Spirit being in our lives is what allows us to experience God's presence here on earth, right? We didn't necessarily have that. When Jesus died and he said to his disciples, I'm going to spend my spirit, and then, you go to the room above and the great wind comes in, that's the Holy Spirit then that comes in, and now the Holy Spirit resides amongst us. So that relationship was somewhat restored. Does that make sense? Like we don't have an inner sanctum anymore. There's no tabernacle. We are free to commune with God through prayer, through, whatever, however you commune with the Holy Spirit. But prior to that, this was the structure that was set up. So like, I just think, okay, if that's all like true, then Eve was a priestess in the inner sanctum, living in the inner sanctum. So to me, that says, again, I think we got it wrong.
What that says that women have a more significant role in society than how they're treated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now I go back. I do like what you were saying, right? Like, and I don't know enough about the divine masculine and feminine energies, and we could definitely have a whole like episode on that. That would be kind of fascinating to me. But I mean, I can see in society where like, again, I go back to what are men's roles, right? We're traditionally have been the hunter-gatherers, the protectors, like we're built differently. We're usually stronger, blah, blah, blah. And so like, it's our job it's part of our role is to be the protectors of our family. But I don't think that means I'm the ruler of the family. Like I'm the protector. But like it's the yin and the yang, right? Like, I mean, if I were forced to have to raise my children on my own, I could do it, but it sure wouldn't be as good as if I had their mom here with them. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like there's a balance there. And so I think the two of us together, you balance out the family because there's a mom and a dad in the picture. Does that am I making sense here?
Yeah.
And again, not saying that a woman couldn't raise a family by themselves. They could, and I'm not trying to diminish that. And I'm just saying,
and you don't want to, I was gonna say you don't want to like discount or discredit, same-sex marriages as well, of course, because they all have that balance as well. Every partnership has balance.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, using your analogy, like if there's these two energies, that the balance is having those two energies present in a family, right? And it's better for children when those two energies are present together in the same household, blah, blah, blah. Like we could argue all of that, right? You look at traditionally, the most troubled people are people that grew up in broken homes, right? Typically children that grow up in a two-parent household where they stayed together and they grew up that way are more grounded, have a better sense of themselves. And, like there's all these psychological studies that say this, right?
Yeah.
And so, I'm just using the terms male and female because, we're using the scripture to do this, right? But like, again, in my situation, I mean, I'm not saying my wife rules the roost. I mean, she generally gets what she wants.
She's in charge.
Right. But I mean, I have told her, no, we're not doing that. Like, because, I don't agree. Right. But, and that's the other thing. The balance is we agree or we're not doing it. If we don't both agree, then we don't agree. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
And so again, I go back to like, oftentimes she'll have the ideas and then I'll turn the idea into action.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's a good balance and partnership to have for sure.
Right.
I will say we're a little over an hour now. So,
oh, we are.
Yeah. So, Michelle, did you have any final remarks before we close out the episode?
No, I don't think so.
No final thoughts to contribute to the conversation?
No final thoughts. I think
Okay.
everybody covered everything.
All right. Yeah.
No.
Great.
All right. So before you close us out, I'm just going to say we have some guests planned that we're trying to line up. So hopefully the next episode we will have that. So we're going to take a little bit of a pause from the Women in the Bible discussions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're trying to line up at least 2, if not 3, people to come on the podcast to talk to us. So that'll be good and fun. Exciting, exactly. So, and if you're listening to this and you think, hey, I have a story that I want to tell, please reach out to us. And then I'll let you guys talk about the ways they can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can reach out to us on Facebook at Naked Faith Podcast or Instagram, same thing, and TikTok and YouTube and pretty much all the major social medias. We are on there. Also, we have our question of the week, which we should ask, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what story do you keep telling yourself that God might be trying to rewrite?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a good one. So definitely add into the conversation on our social media so we can talk about it maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't just like the page.
Yeah.
Actually make comments.
Yeah. Talk to us. We love to talk.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
Clearly. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, find us on all the things at Naked Faith Podcast, and we will see you next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See ya. Thanks for
Bye,
listening.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.